Captain Day-Ho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the cargo manifest on his screen. The numbers were not good. 3 months of hauling medical supplies to the outer colonies, and he was barely breaking even. The fuel costs kept going up, and the Trade Authority kept taking bigger cuts from every job. His ship, the Resilient Dawn, was old but reliable. She had carried him through 15 years of freight runs across the galaxy. The hull was patched in dozens of places, and the engines made strange noises when pushed too hard, but she was home. "Captain," called Tae-min from the engine room through the comm system. "We're coming up on Kepler 442b. The mining colony should be expecting us." Day-Ho nodded even though Tae-min could not see him. "Good. Let's get this delivery done and head back to Haven Station. I need a real meal and a soft bed." So Young, the ship's medic, looked up from her medical journals. "The colonists will be happy to see us. They've been waiting 3 months for these antibiotics." "As long as they pay on time," Day-Ho muttered. He had learned not to trust promises from desperate colonies. Too many captains had been left with worthless IOUs instead of credits. The bridge was quiet except for the steady hum of the life support systems. Hyan Wu, their navigator, was asleep in his chair. It had been a long run from the core worlds, and everyone was tired. That's when the proximity alarm started beeping. Day-Ho sat up straight. "Hyan Wu, wake up." "What's that signal?" The young navigator rubbed his eyes and checked his instruments. "It's a distress beacon, Captain. Coming from the asteroid field near the colony. Could be pirates." Tae-min's voice crackled through the comm. "They sometimes use fake distress calls to lure ships into traps." Day-Ho thought about it. Pirates were a real problem in the Outer Rim. The Trade Authority's patrol ships rarely came this far from the core worlds. But something about the signal felt different. It was weak and irregular, not like the strong, steady beacons pirates usually used. "Can you tell what kind of ship it is?" Day-Ho asked. Hyan Wu worked his controls for a few minutes. "It's strange, Captain. The beacon is transmitting on an old frequency. And the ship, it doesn't match any human design in our database." So Young looked worried. "An alien ship? Maybe?" Day-Ho said. He stared at the sensor readings. Making contact with unknown aliens could be dangerous, but it could also be the discovery of a lifetime. "Take us in for a closer look, but keep the weapons ready." The Resilient Dawn changed course toward the asteroid field. The rocks here were huge, some as big as small moons. Perfect places to hide a ship or set an ambush. "There," Hyan Wu pointed at his screen, "between those 2 big asteroids." Day-Ho saw it too. The ship was small, about the size of a fighter craft, but its design was unlike anything he had ever seen. The hull was smooth and curved, made from some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. One wing was completely torn off, and there were blast marks along the side. "It's been attacked," So Young said quietly. "Life signs?" Day-Ho asked. Hyan Wu checked his sensors. "Weak, but yes. 1 person, I think." Day-Ho made his decision. "Tae-min, get the shuttle ready." So Young, grab your medical kit. We're going over there." "Captain," Tae-min's voice was full of concern. "We don't know what we're dealing with. Could be dangerous." "Could be," Day-Ho agreed. "But someone needs help. That's enough for me." The shuttle ride to the alien craft was short but tense. As they got closer, Day-Ho could see that the ship was even more damaged than it had looked from far away. The cockpit was cracked, and atmosphere was leaking out in tiny puffs of frozen gas. "Whoever's in there doesn't have much time," So Young said. They docked with the alien ship using magnetic clamps. The airlocks were different, but Tae-min managed to get them connected. When the doors opened, Day-Ho was surprised by what he saw. Inside of the ship looked almost human. The controls were in the right places, and the seats were the right size. But everything was made from materials he didn't recognize, and there were symbols instead of letters on the displays. And there, slumped over the controls, was a young woman who looked completely human. "That's impossible," Tae-min whispered. The woman was unconscious, but breathing. She wore clothes that looked expensive but strange. The fabric seemed to shimmer with its own light, and the cut was unlike any fashion Dae-ho had seen. Her face was pale, and there was blood on her forehead from where she had hit the controls. So Young immediately went to work, checking the woman's pulse and breathing. "She's alive but hurt. We need to get her back to our ship." As they carefully moved the woman to their shuttle, Dae-ho noticed something else. The alien ship's computer was still working, displaying symbols that looked almost familiar. Like Korean writing, but different somehow. "Captain," Hyun-woo's voice came through their comm units. "I'm picking up new contacts on long-range sensors. 3 ships moving fast in our direction." Dae-ho felt his stomach drop. How long until they get here? 20 minutes, maybe less. They got the woman aboard the Resilient Dawn just as the first shots started flying. The new ships were sleek and deadly looking, nothing like the damaged craft they had just left. Energy beams lanced out, turning the alien ship into vapor. There, trying to destroy the evidence, Dae-ho realized. "Captain, they're hailing us," Hyun-woo reported. "Put them through." The voice that came through their speakers was cold and mechanical. It spoke in standard galactic trade language, but with an accent Dae-ho didn't recognize. "Human vessel, you will surrender the stolen property immediately, or you will be destroyed." Dae-ho looked at the unconscious woman on So Young's medical table. She looked so peaceful, like she was just sleeping. But somehow, he knew that giving her up would mean her death. "This is Captain Dae-ho of the merchant vessel Resilient Dawn," he said into the comm. "I don't know what you're talking about. We're just making a supply run to the mining colony. You have 10 seconds to comply, human." The alien ships were getting closer. Dae-ho could see weapons charging on their hulls. His old freight hauler had shields and a few defensive guns, but nothing that could stand up to military-grade weapons. In the medical bay, the woman's eyes fluttered open. She looked around in confusion until she saw Dae-ho. Then her eyes went wide with fear, and she said something in a language he didn't understand. But her meaning was clear. She was terrified of being found. "Time's up, human." The first energy beam missed them by inches. Dae-ho threw the ship into a hard turn, diving between 2 asteroids as more shots followed. "Tae-min, I need everything the engines can give us." "Captain, the cargo hold." So Young called out. "If we vent the medical supplies, the chemical reaction might give us cover." It was a crazy idea. They would lose their entire cargo, worth months of income. But as another energy beam scorched their hull, Dae-ho made his choice. Do it. The cargo hold doors opened, spilling thousands of medical containers into space. The chemicals mixed and created a bright, expanding cloud that confused the alien ship's sensors. In the chaos, the Resilient Dawn slipped away into the darkness between the asteroids. As they fled toward open space, Dae-ho looked back at the woman they had rescued. She was sitting up now, holding So Young's hand and speaking in that strange, familiar language. Whatever she was running from, it was bad enough that someone was willing to kill to get her back. Dae-ho had just made an enemy he didn't understand, lost a cargo worth a fortune, and taken on a passenger who might get them all killed. But looking at the relief in the young woman's eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. The galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and the Resilient Dawn was limping toward Haven Station with damaged engines and empty cargo holds. The woman they had saved was getting stronger, but communication was still nearly impossible. So Young had tried everything to talk with their passenger. The ship's translator could pick up bits and pieces of her language, but it kept giving strange results. Sometimes it said she was speaking ancient Korean. Other times it claimed the language didn't exist in its database. Her name is Nari, So Young told Dae-ho as they sat in the small galley. At least, I think that's what she said. She keeps pointing to herself and saying it. Nari sat across from them, eating the simple meal So Young had prepared. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. But there was a sadness in her face that made Dae-ho's heart ache. She's scared, So Young continued, really scared. Every time she hears a noise from the engines or the comm system, she jumps. Dae-ho nodded. He had noticed that too. Nari flinched whenever they received routine messages from other ships or space stations. It was like she expected bad news with every transmission. Captain, Hyen-woo called from the bridge. You need to see this. Dae-ho and So Young hurried to the bridge, with Nari following close behind. On the main screen was a news broadcast from the Galactic News Network. Double quotes ... reports of attacks on human merchant vessels continue to increase in the Outer Rim territories. The attackers are believed to be ships from the Valthek Empire, though no official statement has been made by either the Empire or the Human Trade Authority. The reporter was a well-dressed woman standing in front of a star map. Red dots marked the locations of recent attacks. In each case, the attacking vessels have demanded the surrender of what they call stolen property. Ships that comply are searched and then released. Those that refuse. The screen showed images of destroyed freighters floating in space. Nari made a small sound of distress and covered her mouth with her hands. Dae-ho saw tears forming in her eyes. Captain, Tamin's voice came from the engine room. I'm getting reports on the emergency channels. The Valthek are stopping every human ship they can find. They're looking for something. Dae-ho felt a cold weight in his stomach. Or someone. He looked at Nari, who was staring at the news broadcast with obvious fear. She said something in her strange language, and the ship's translator gave a partial result. Sorry. ... danger. My fault. It's not your fault, So Young told her gently, though Dae-ho wasn't sure Nari understood. Over the next few hours, more reports came in. The Valthek were being systematic about their search. They had divided the Outer Rim into sectors and were checking every human ship in each area. Some captains were fighting back, but the alien ships were too powerful for most civilian vessels. They're not just looking, Hyen-woo observed as he studied the pattern of attacks. They're herding us toward the core worlds, forcing all human traffic into a smaller area where they can search more easily. Dae-ho was impressed by his navigator's insight. Smart. And we're heading right into their trap. We could change course, Taemin suggested over the comm. Head for the frontier, instead of Haven Station. With what fuel? Dae-ho replied. We're already running on fumes, and the frontier is mostly empty space. If we break down out there, no one will find us for months. Nari had been listening to their conversation with growing agitation. Suddenly, she stood up and began speaking rapidly in her language. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. The ship's translator worked frantically to keep up. Gift ... emperor ... peace ... please ... no surrender. She grabbed Dae-ho's hand and looked into his eyes. Even without a common language, her message was clear. Don't give me back to them. We won't, Dae-ho promised, though he wasn't sure how he could keep that promise. The next day brought worse news. The Valthek had destroyed 3 more human ships, and this time there were witnesses. A mining vessel had watched from hiding as alien warships cornered a passenger liner near the Centauri system. The liner tried to surrender, the mining captain reported over subspace radio. But the Veil-Thek boarded anyway. They executed the entire crew when they didn't find what they were looking for. The message sent shockwaves through the human communities in the Outer Rim. These weren't just searches anymore. The Veil-Thek were getting desperate, and desperate enemies were dangerous. D-Ho called a meeting in the galley. His crew needed to know what they were up against. "They're going to find us eventually," he said without sugarcoating the truth. "Our engines are damaged, we're low on fuel, and we're carrying the person they're looking for. We could hide in an asteroid field," Haiyan Wu suggested. "Power down everything and wait for them to pass." Tai Min shook his head. "The engines need repair. We can't run silent for more than a few hours before the life support starts failing." "What about calling for help?" So Young asked. "The Trade Authority has patrol ships." "The Trade Authority can't fight a war with the Veil-Thek Empire," Dai-Ho replied. "They'd probably order us to hand Nari over to avoid an incident." Nari had been listening to their discussion with growing understanding. Her grasp of their language was improving quickly, and she seemed to pick up more words each day. Now she spoke carefully in broken standard. "I was gift," she said slowly, "for Emperor, to make ... peace between peoples." The crew exchanged glances. A gift for an emperor sounded like a diplomatic hostage. What peoples? Dai-Ho asked gently. Nari thought for a moment, searching for the right words. "My people ... Your people ... Same, but different. Long ago ... Separate." It didn't make much sense, but before Dai-Ho could ask more questions, alarms started blaring. Throughout the ship, "Captain," Haiyan Wu called from the bridge. Multiple contacts, closing fast. They rushed to the bridge to see 5 Veil-Thek warships surrounding them. The aliens had been waiting in ambush, powered down and invisible until the last moment. "Clever," Dai-Ho admitted grudgingly. The lead Veil-Thek ship hailed them immediately. The same cold, mechanical voice they had heard before filled the bridge. "Human vessel, you are surrounded. Surrender the stolen property, and you will be permitted to leave." Dai-Ho looked at Nari, who was standing beside the captain's chair. She met his eyes and shook her head slightly. Whatever the Veil-Thek wanted her for, she would rather die than go back. "Resilient Dawn to Veil-Thek vessels," Dai-Ho said into the com. "We are a legitimate merchant ship carrying medical supplies. We have no stolen property aboard. You have 30 seconds to comply, human. Our patience is at an end." On the tactical display, weapon systems were powering up on all 5 alien ships. The Resilient Dawn's small defensive guns would be useless against that kind of firepower. Dai-Ho noticed something interesting on his sensors. Other human ships were in the area, probably hoping to reach Haven Station before the Veil-Thek found them. Most were hiding behind asteroids or running with minimal power, but they were there. "Open a channel to all human vessels in the area," Dai-Ho ordered quietly. "Captain?" Haiyan Wu looked confused. "Do it." When the channel was open, Dai-Ho spoke. Quickly but clearly. "This is Captain Dai-Ho of the Resilient Dawn to all human ships in this sector. The Veil-Thek are murdering civilians. They killed everyone aboard the liner near Centauri. If we don't fight back now, they'll pick us off one by one." He could see the alien ships moving into attack position. "I'm not asking you to die for me," Dai-Ho continued. "But if you're going to die anyway, you might as well take some of them with you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, human ships began emerging from hiding. Old freighters, mining vessels, even a few passenger transports. None of them were warships, but there were more than 20 of them. 15 seconds, human," the Velthek commander warned. "This is Captain Ginny of the merchant vessel Bright Hope," a woman's voice came over the comm. "I'm with you, Resilient Dawn." "Mining ship Stonebreaker standing by," another voice added. More voices joined in until the comm channel was filled with the voices of ordinary people who had decided they weren't going to run anymore. The Velthek commander sounded genuinely surprised when he spoke again. "Human vessels, withdraw immediately or you will all be destroyed." "I don't think so," Beihao replied. The battle that followed was chaos. The human ships had no military training and no coordinated tactics. But they had something the Velthek hadn't expected: the desperate creativity of people with nothing left to lose. Mining ships used their industrial lasers as weapons. Cargo haulers rammed alien vessels with their reinforced hulls. A passenger transport deliberately vented its atmosphere to create a sensor-blocking cloud, allowing other ships to attack from ambush. The Resilient Dawn fought in the center of it all, with Daiho using every dirty trick he had learned in 15 years of dodging pirates and corrupt officials. When their guns overheated, Taemin rigged the emergency thruster fuel to explode like a missile. When their shields failed, So Young used the medical bay's decontamination system to create an electromagnetic pulse that disrupted enemy targeting. In the end, 3 Velthek ships were destroyed and the other 2 retreated. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Half the human ships were gone, and the survivors were badly damaged. As rescue shuttles moved between the wrecks, the makeshift fleet of human survivors limped through space for 2 days before reaching Haven Station. What they found there was not the safe harbor they had hoped for. The station was in chaos. Thousands of refugees from the Outer Rim colonies crowded the docking bays, all fleeing the Velthek advance. The station's administrators were overwhelmed, and supplies were running dangerously low. Daiho managed to get the Resilient Dawn a docking berth, but only because So Young convinced the port authority that they had wounded a board who needed immediate medical attention. It wasn't exactly a lie. Several of their rescued passengers were hurt, and Nari still had injuries from her crashed ship. "Captain, you need to see this." Haiyan Wu called from the comm station as they finished docking procedures. The main screen showed a news broadcast, but this one was different from the usual reports. The Galactic Trade Authority had called an emergency session, and human colonies throughout the galaxy were demanding action against the Velthek Empire. "The attacks on civilian ships cannot be tolerated," the Trade Authority chairman was saying. "We are prepared to lodge a formal protest with the Galactic Council." Daiho snorted. "A protest, that'll show them." But Nari was watching the broadcast with intense interest. Her standard was getting better every day, and she could understand most of what was being said now. "They not understand," she said quietly. "Velthek not fear words. What do they fear?" Daiho asked. Nari was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "My people." Over the next few hours, as they waited for repairs and refueling, Nari began to tell them her real story. It came out in pieces, with So Young helping to translate the more difficult parts. Nari was not just a refugee or a diplomatic hostage. She was a princess, the heir to something called the Han Seong dynasty. And the dynasty was not some primitive alien civilization, as Daiho had assumed. It was human. Long ago, Nari explained, as they sat in the station's crowded cafeteria. When Earth first reached for stars, many ships leave. Some go to core worlds. Others go farther, much farther. She drew circles on the table with her finger, showing the different waves of human expansion. My ancestors, they find worlds beyond the edge. Rich worlds, safe worlds. They build cities, learn new things, grow strong. But she paused, searching for the right words. They remember Earth wars. Remember what happened when humans fight humans. So Young was following the story with fascination. So they stayed hidden? Nari nodded. Hidden from other humans. Hidden from aliens. For 3,000 years, we watch and wait. We help sometimes, in secret, but never show ourselves. Daeho felt his worldview shifting. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. How many of you are there? Many, Nari said simply. More than core worlds, more than colonies. We are everywhere, but you not see us. Tae Min, who had been listening, quietly spoke up. If your people are so powerful, why were you running from the Veilthik? Nari's face darkened. Veilthik find us. Somehow they learn truth. They demand ... tribute, marriage alliance. Me to their emperor, to make sure Han Xiong obey them. A political marriage, So Young said with disgust. They were going to sell you to prevent a war. My father, the emperor, he agree. Say it only way to save both peoples. Nari's voice was bitter. But I not agree. I escape when they transfer me to Veilthik ship. The pieces were falling into place for Daeho. That's why they're so desperate. To find you. Without the marriage, there's no alliance. And if there's no alliance ... war, Nari finished. Big war. Veilthik against Han Xiong. And humans in middle get crushed. It was a lot to take in. Daeho excused himself and walked to one of the station's observation decks, where he could see the stars through the thick, transparent aluminum windows. So Young found him there an hour later. You believe her? She asked. I don't know, Daeho admitted. It sounds impossible. But then again, so did everything else that's happened this week. If it's true, it changes everything. We're not alone out here. We never were. Before Daeho could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The public address system crackled to life. All civilian vessels prepare for immediate departure. Veilthik fleet approaching. This is not a drill. They rushed back to the resilient dawn to find chaos on the docking level. Ships were launching as fast as they could get clearance, but there were too many of them and not enough time. Captain, Tae Min reported from the engine room, repairs are only half finished. We can fly, but not fast and not far. It'll have to do, Daeho replied. Get us launched. As they pulled away from Haven Station, Daeho could see the Veilthik fleet on long-range sensors. Dozens of ships, more than had been seen in human space before. This wasn't a search mission anymore. This was an invasion. They're not just looking for Nari, Haiyan-Wu observed. That's enough firepower to conquer half the outer rim. Nari was on the bridge now, staring at the tactical display with a mixture of fear and determination. They forced the choice, she said quietly. What choice? Daeho asked. My people stay hidden. Let colonies fall to Veilthik. Or reveal ourselves. Fight war we tried to avoid for 3,000 years. The civilian ships fleeing Haven Station were scattered and disorganized. Some headed for the core worlds, others toward the distant frontier. A few, like the resilient Dawn, seemed to be heading nowhere in particular, just away from the approaching enemy. Captain, Nari said suddenly, I need ask favor. What kind of favor? Take me to edge space. To border of Han Xiong territory. I must speak with my people. Daeho thought about it. The edge was dangerous even under normal circumstances. It was the frontier beyond the frontier, where few ships ventured and fewer returned. With damaged engines and limited supplies, it would be suicide. Nari, he said gently, even if we could make it that far, how would we find your people if they've been hiding for thousands of years? She smiled, and for the first time since they had found her, it was a smile without sadness. They will find us. They watch everything. They know about you, about rescue, about battle with Veilthik. How can you be sure? Because I am daughter of Emperor. They not let me die in alien space. It was a leap of faith, but Dae-ho had been taking those a lot lately. Tae-min, plot a course for the edge. Best speed we can manage. Captain, Hyan-woo said quietly, the Veilthek will follow us. We'll be leading them right to Nari's people. No, Nare said firmly. Veilthek already know where to find Han Seong. That's why they invade Outer Rim now. They force us to choose. Hide and let humans die, or fight and reveal ourselves. She looked at each of them in turn. You already make choice. You fight for stranger, risk everything for what is right. Now I make same choice. The journey to the edge took 5 days, and they were the longest 5 days of Daehee's life. The engines held together, barely, and they managed to stay ahead of their pursuers. But it was close. Too close. On the 3rd day, they received a transmission that chilled Dae-ho's blood. It was a message from the Veilthek fleet, broadcast on all frequencies. To the Han Seong dynasty, your princes will be returned when you surrender unconditionally to the Veilthek Empire. You have 72 hours to respond. They're using me as bait, Nari said quietly. Will your people negotiate? So Young asked. My father might. He think like politician, always look for peaceful solution. Nari's voice hardened. But I am not my father. On the 5th day, as they approached the coordinates Nari had given them, something appeared on their sensors that made Hyan-woo gasp in amazement. God, it was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a star a candle. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of the largest human vessel Dae-ho had ever seen. And its design was clearly human, but advanced beyond anything in the known galaxy. Welcome home, princess, a voice said over their comm system, speaking in perfect standard. This is Admiral Wu Jin of the Han Seong Royal Fleet. Permission to come aboard? As a shuttle bay opened in the massive ship's hull, Nari turned to Dae-ho. Now you see truth. Question is, what do we do with it? Looking at the incredible vessel before them, Dae-ho realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. The only question was whether humanity would survive what was coming. I guess we find out, he said, as the resilient dawn was drawn into the belly of a ship that represented 3,000 years of hidden human achievement. Behind them, the Veilthek fleet was closing in, unaware that they were about to face an enemy they never knew existed. The secret was out, and there would be no going back. The shuttle bay of the Han Seong ship was larger than most space stations Dae-ho had visited. As the resilient dawn settled into its assigned berth, he could see dozens of other vessels. Some human designs he recognized, others that looked like they came from a completely different civilization. Admiral Wu Jin met them at the airlock. He was a tall, dignified man in his 50s, wearing a uniform that looked like it belonged in a museum, elegant and formal, with symbols that reminded Dae-ho of ancient Korean military dress. Princess Nari, the admiral said, bowing deeply. Your father has been worried sick. The entire fleet has been searching for you. Nari returned the bow, but there was tension in her posture. Admiral, I assume you received my message about the Veilthek? We did, and we've been monitoring the situation in the Outer Rim. Wu Jin's eyes moved to Dae-ho and his crew. These are the ones who rescued you? Yes, Captain Dae-ho and his crew of the Resilient Dawn. They risked everything to save a stranger. The admiral studied them with interest. Impressive. Most civilians would have handed you over to save themselves. He gestured toward a corridor. Come, your father is waiting. As they walked through the ship, Dae-ho felt like he was in a dream. The corridors were wide and beautifully decorated, with artwork that mixed traditional Korean themes with futuristic designs. The crew members they passed wore the same elegant uniforms and moved with military precision. How big is this ship? Tay Min whispered. The Eternal Phoenix is our flagship, Admiral Wu Jin replied, having overheard. She carries a crew of 50,000 and has the firepower to destroy entire fleets. So Young looked amazed. 50,000? That's bigger than most cities. The Han Seong dynasty has learned much in 3,000 years of isolation, the admiral said proudly. We have technologies your people cannot imagine. They entered a vast chamber that took Dae-ho's breath away. It was designed like a traditional Korean palace hall, but made from materials that seemed to glow with their own light. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat an elderly man in robes that sparkled like captured starlight. Emperor Guangxu looked exactly like what Dae-ho expected of a ruler who commanded a hidden empire. His face was lined with age and wisdom, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. When he saw Nari, however, those eyes filled with relief and love. My daughter, he said, rising from his throne, thank the ancestors you are safe. Nari approached and knelt before her father, but Dae-ho could see the stiffness in her movements. This was not a happy reunion. Father, I bring grave news. The Veilthek know about us. All of it. The Emperor's face darkened. Yes, we are aware. Their spies infiltrated our outer territories months ago. That is why we agreed to the marriage. Alliance. A marriage that would have made me a slave, Nari said, rising to her feet, and would have given the Veilthek access to our technology and our worlds. It would have prevented a war that could destroy both our peoples. The Emperor replied firmly. Dae-ho watched this family argument with growing discomfort. These were not his decisions to make, but he couldn't help feeling that Nari was right. Giving in to the Veilthek would only encourage them to make more demands. Your Majesty, Admiral Wu Jin interrupted. The Veilthek fleet has reached the edge. They're demanding we surrender the princess within 48 hours, or they will begin attacking Outer Rim colonies. Emperor Guangxu sighed heavily. How many ships? Over 200, including their flagship, the Dominator. The numbers were staggering. Dae-ho had seen what just 5 Veilthek ships could do. 200 would be unstoppable. We have the strength to fight them, Nari said quietly. Why do we continue to hide? Because war is not just about strength, my daughter. It is about consequences. The Emperor gestured to a wall display that showed a map of the galaxy. If we reveal ourselves now, every other species will see us as a threat. They will unite against us. The Veilthek conflict will become a galactic war. And if we stay hidden, the colonies will be enslaved or destroyed, Nari countered. These people are our people, Father. They are human. We cannot abandon them. Dae-ho found himself caught between 2 impossible choices. He thought about all the civilians fleeing the Outer Rim, all the families torn apart by the Veilthek advance. But he also understood the Emperor's fear. A galactic war would mean billions of deaths. Your Majesty, he said, surprising himself by speaking up. May I say something? The Emperor looked at him with interest. You are the captain who saved my daughter. Speak freely. I've spent 15 years hauling cargo through the Outer Rim. I've seen what happens when people have to choose between safety and doing what's right. Dae-ho took a deep breath. The ones who choose safety usually end up losing both. Explain. The pirates who raid colonies, they always promise to leave people alone if they just pay tribute. But the tribute keeps getting bigger, and eventually the pirates take everything anyway. The trade authority officials who demand bribes, they always want more, and they never keep their promises to protect honest merchants. The Emperor was listening intently. And you believe the Veilthek are the same? I know they are. I've seen their negotiations. They execute civilians who can't. Give them what they want. Even if you give them Nari, even if you give them access to your technology, they'll just come back for more. Nari nodded eagerly. Captain Dae-ho is right. The colonies are not some distant problem we can ignore. They are the beginning. Once the Velfek control the outer rim, they will move to the core worlds. And eventually, they will find a way to our hidden territories. But the cost, the Emperor said quietly, the cost of war ... will be higher if we wait, Nari finished. Father, I have seen what these people can do when they fight for something they believe in. Captain Deho and his crew risked everything for a stranger. The colonists at Haven Station fought hopeless battles rather than surrender. They have something we have forgotten in our 3,000 years of hiding. What is that? Courage. Real courage. Not the careful courage of calculated risks, but the courage to do what's right, even when you know it might cost you everything. Emperor was quiet for a long time, staring at the galaxy map. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Wu Jin, what is the status of our fleet? We have over 800 ships ready for immediate deployment, Your Majesty. With our technological advantages, we could defeat the Velfek fleet currently at the edge. But their main battle fleets are still in Velfek space. If we reveal ourselves now, they will bring everything they have. It will be total war, the Emperor nodded slowly. And the colonies? How long can they hold out? Without help? Days, maybe weeks. The Velfek are not interested in occupying territory. They want slaves and resources. They will strip the colonies, bear and move on. Deho felt sick thinking about all the people he knew in the outer rim. Miners, farmers, shopkeepers, ordinary people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of an interstellar power struggle. There is another option, Nari said suddenly. We don't have to reveal everything at once. What do you mean? Her father asked. Nari turned to Deho. You said the colonists fought bravely, but they lost because they didn't have the right weapons or training. What if we gave them both? Deho began to understand. You want to arm the colonies. Give them Hanseong technology. Not just technology. Advisors. Ships. Everything they need to fight back effectively. But we do it quietly, through intermediaries like Captain Deho and his crew. Admiral Wu Jin looked skeptical. That would still reveal our existence eventually. But gradually, Nari explained. The galaxy would see humans becoming stronger and more unified, not a hidden empire suddenly appearing to conquer everyone. We become partners with the colonies, not their secret rulers. The Emperor was considering this carefully. It would be unprecedented. We have never interfered so directly in human affairs. Father, these are not human affairs anymore. This is about survival. The Velfek will not stop with the colonies. They will keep pushing until they control the entire galaxy. We can fight them now, while we still have allies, or we can fight them later, alone. A soft chime interrupted the discussion. A communications officer approached the throne and whispered something to Admiral Wu Jin. Your Majesty, the Admiral reported, the Velfek had just attacked the mining colony at Kepler 442b. Complete orbital bombardment. No survivors. Deho felt the blood drained from his face. That was the colony they had been delivering medical supplies to when they found Nari. People he had traded with for years were dead. How many? The Emperor asked quietly. 50,000 colonists, Your Majesty. The throne room was silent for a long moment. Then Emperor Guangxu stood up, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 3,000 years of hidden rule. Admiral Wu Jin, prepare the fleet for combat operations. Send word to all our territories. The time of hiding is over. He looked at his daughter with pride and sadness. You were right, Nari. We cannot watch our people die while we debate the consequences of action. Nari bowed deeply. Thank you, Father. Do not thank me yet. This decision will change everything, for all of us. The Emperor turned to Dai-Ho. "Captain, you and your crew will be our liaison with the colony forces. Are you willing to carry this burden?" The transformation of the resilient Dawn took only 12 hours, but it felt like magic to Dai-Ho and his crew. Hanxiang engineers swarmed over their old freight hauler, installing new engines, weapons, and shields that used technology beyond anything they had ever imagined. "Try not to think too hard about how it works," Chief Engineer Yun Seo advised as she showed Taemin the new power systems. "Your people will figure it out eventually, but for now, just accept that it works." General Yun Seo was Nari's mentor, and one of the few people in the Hanxiang court who supported the princess's aggressive approach to the crisis. She was a small, intense woman who reminded Dai-Ho of a coiled spring, quiet until the moment she needed to strike. "The weapons are designed to look like enhanced human technology," she explained to Dai-Ho as they stood on the bridge. "If anyone asks, you'll say you bought black market upgrades from smugglers. It's not entirely untrue." Dai-Ho nodded, running his hands over the new control panels. Everything felt different, more responsive. The ship hummed with barely contained power. How long before the Velfek figure out what's really happening? "Not long," General Yun Seo admitted. "But we don't need long. Just enough time to get the colonies organized and armed." Through the bridge windows, Dai-Ho could see the Hanxiang fleet preparing for battle. Hundreds of ships that had been hidden for 3,000 years were finally moving into the light. It was the most beautiful and terrifying sight he had ever. Witness. Nari entered the bridge wearing new clothes, not the elegant robes of a princess, but the practical uniform of a ship's captain. The change suited her. "The fleet is ready," she announced. "Father has given me command of the colonial liaison forces." "What about your brother?" General Yun Seo asked. "Prince Jae-Sung was supposed to lead the military operations." Nari's expression darkened slightly. "My brother believes this war is a mistake. He has removed himself from consideration." Dai-Ho got the impression there was more to that story, but this wasn't the time to ask about Hanxiang family politics. "So what's the plan?" he asked instead. Nari activated the bridge's main display, showing a tactical map of the outer rim. Red markers indicated Velfek positions, while blue showed human colonies and fleets. "The Velfek have made a mistake," she explained. "They're trying to conquer too much territory too quickly. Their forces are spread thin." "Doesn't look thin to me," Haiyan-Wu observed. There were red markers everywhere. "That's because you're thinking like the Trade Authority," General Yun Seo said. "They see military strength in terms of big fleets and formal battles, but humans have always fought differently." She zoomed in on a section of the map. "Here, the Velfek have established a supply base at the old mining station in the Gamma sector. It's heavily defended, but it's also critical to their operations. Take it out, and 3 entire battle groups lose their fuel and ammunition." "You want us to attack a heavily defended base with one ship?" Taemin asked, sounding nervous. "Not attack," Nare corrected. "Inspire." "Captain Dai-Ho, you're going to do what you did at Haven Station. You're going to show the colonists that the Velfek can be beaten." Over the next 6 hours, Dai-Ho watched as the most audacious military operation in human history began to unfold. Small groups of Hanxiang ships, disguised as colonial vessels, spread throughout the outer rim. Their mission was not to win the war single-handedly, but to give the colonists the tools and confidence they needed to fight back. The resilient Dawn led a convoy of refugee ships toward the Gamma Sector supply base. To any observer, they looked like desperate civilians fleeing the Velfek advance. In reality, each ship carried advanced weapons and teams of Hanxiang special forces. "Velfek patrol approaching," Haiyan-Wu reported as they neared the supply base. 3 ships, standard configuration. Perfect, Nari said. Remember, we need to look helpless until the last possible moment. The veil-thick ships moved to intercept them, just as they had hoped. The alien commander's voice filled the bridge with its familiar mechanical coldness. Human vessels, prepare to be boarded and searched. Any resistance will result in your destruction. This is Captain Deho of the refugee convoy. Deho replied, letting fear creep into his voice. We're just trying to get to safety. We don't have anything you want. That will be determined during the search. Reduce speed and prepare for boarding. As the veil-thick ships closed in, Deho gave the signal. The refugee convoy suddenly revealed its true nature. Hidden weapons ports opened. Shields that had been powered down to look like failed systems sprang to life, and engines that had been running at quarter power suddenly roared to full capacity. The battle was over in minutes. The veil-thick patrol ships, designed to intimidate helpless civilians, were no match for military vessels with superior technology and trained crews. Phase 1 complete, Narai announced. Now for the real test. The supply base was indeed heavily defended, with orbital platforms and patrol squadrons that would have been impossible for normal human ships to defeat. But the resilient Dawn and her convoy were far from normal now. The attack began with the mining ships in the convoy using their industrial equipment in ways the designers never intended. Asteroid-boring lasers became precision weapons that could slice through armor like paper. Cargo manipulation fields became tractor beams that could crush enemy ships or fling them into each other. The passenger transports launched what appeared to be lifeboats, but were actually stealth fighters crewed by Hanseong pilots. The freighters opened their cargo bays to reveal missile launchers that had been hidden among legitimate trade goods. But it was the resilient Dawn herself that provided the most shocking surprise. As the largest veil-thick defense platform turned its weapons toward them, Nari activated systems that Deho hadn't even known were installed. The space around their ship suddenly twisted and bent. For a moment, Deho felt like he was falling through emptiness. Then they were somewhere else entirely, inside the defense platform's shields, close enough to touch its hull. Dimensional fold drive, General Unesio explained calmly. Very useful for surprise attacks. The platform's shields were designed to keep enemies out, not to contain explosions within. When the resilient Dawn's new weapons fired at point-blank range, the entire structure came apart like a puzzle box with too many pieces. Within an hour, the supply base was completely destroyed. More importantly, the battle had been broadcast across the emergency frequencies used by human ships throughout the sector. This is Captain Jinneh of the merchant vessel Bright Hope, came a familiar voice over the comm. We saw what you did to those veil-thick ships. How can we help? Mining. Ship Stone Breaker here. We've got industrial lasers and nothing left to lose. Where do you need us? The response was everything Nari had hoped for. Within days, the impossible victory at Gamma Station had inspired uprisings throughout the Outer Rim. Human ships that had been running and hiding began fighting back. Colonies that had prepared to surrender started building defenses. The veil-thick found themselves facing an enemy they didn't understand. Every human ship seemed to have capabilities beyond what their intelligence had suggested. Cargo haulers fought like warships. Mining equipment was turned into siege weapons. Even passenger liners became dangerous when crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. But the enemy was not helpless. 3 weeks into the uprising, the veil-thick revealed their true strength. The main battle fleet arrived from their home territories, over 1,000 ships, including the massive dreadnought Dominator. Emperor Valthek Prime himself commanded the flagship. His message to the human colonies was simple and brutal. Surrender. Immediately, or we will exterminate every human in the galaxy. He means it, Nari said as they received intelligence reports from Hanseong scouts. The Veilthek have done it before to other species who defied them. The final battle took place in the Kepler system, where the Veilthek had begun their campaign of genocide. It seemed fitting that it should end there too. Nari had taken command of the combined human fleet Hanseong warships fighting alongside colonial militia. Elegant cruisers coordinating with converted cargo haulers, ancient technology working with cutting-edge innovations. This is not how wars are supposed to be fought, Admiral Wu Jin observed as he watched a mining ship use its gravity manipulation equipment to fling asteroids at enemy vessels. No, Nari agreed from the captain's chair of the Resilient Dawn. This is how humans fight wars. The battle was chaos on a scale that defied description. The Veilthek fought with discipline and overwhelming firepower, just as they always had. But the humans fought with something their enemies had never encountered before, a desperate creativity of people defending their homes. Freight haulers rammed battleships. Passenger transports used their life support systems to create sensor-jamming clouds. A hospital ship turned its medical equipment into a weapon that disrupted Veilthek nervous systems. In the center of it all, the Resilient Dawn danced between. Capital ships like a fighter, using her dimensional fold drive to appear where she was least expected. Each time she folded space, she carried a small piece of hell with her, converted mining charges that detonated with the force of small suns. Turning point came when a group of asteroid miners discovered that their boring equipment could destabilize.